Chucky, a story about a killer who transforms his soul into a children's doll to avoid death. While in this form, he goes on a killing spree, torturing a family and slaughtering anyone close to them. The original film did well, grossing over $44 million, with an estimated budget of $9 million. People loved the twisted and eerie plot of a child's toy being possessed by a murderous spirit. A great idea and plot for a horror film. But what if they had help? What if the film was based off another doll who was reportedly possessed? And like Andy, this doll was owned by a boy who loved his doll more than anything. So much so that the young Otto started to act very odd whenever he was with his cherished companion. During this video, we will dive into the backstory of Eugene Otto and his precious doll Robert, and learn why so many people are terrified to go near the doll to this very day. The doll belonged to Eugene Otto. As a boy, Eugene was blessed with a comfortable upbringing in Key West, Florida. Surrounded by support staff to take care of the young boy, the origins of Robert are not exactly known. But some believe Robert was given to Eugene by his grandfather when he returned from a trip to Germany. Another theory is that the Otto family mistreated their staff and maids. One day, when a maid was caught practicing voodoo in the home, she was fired. But before leaving, she gave the doll to a young Otto. Otto quickly took a liking to Robert and began bringing him everywhere. At first, no one really thought anything was out of the ordinary. Otto is young, and it's perfectly fine to have an imaginary friend or doll you talk to as a child. But then people started to hear a deeper voice whisper back when Otto talked to Robert. Those who heard their conversations were worried, but then convinced themselves that they were either hearing things or Eugene was the one speaking for both of them. I mean, wouldn't anyone? I'm positive if I heard a young Otto having a conversation with his doll, I would chalk it out to my imagination as well. And if that's all that happened, the story of Robert the doll would be a fairly boring one. A boy talked to his doll when he was younger and grew out of it. But that's not what happened. In fact, the two never stopped talking to each other, and Otto's infatuation with Robert grew even more. A loud and violent commotion could be heard almost nightly, coming from Otto's room. When he would be checked on, there would be furniture thrown across the room and Otto's other toys torn apart. When Eugene was found, he would be huddled in the corner of his room, terrified. When asked what happened, all Eugene would say was, "Robert did it." After a while, the doll couldn't be ignored, so it was decided Robert would be placed in the attic. At nighttime, Robert could be heard moving around the upstairs part of the mansion, and was even heard giggling throughout the night. When Eugene grew up, he found his old friend, and began taking him everywhere again. Otto worked as an artist, and even married. Otto placed Robert at the window of their home to give him a nice view. When people would pass by the home, some would say they saw Robert moving around the window and disappear, only to appear again a few seconds later. Word got out, and residents began avoiding the home. Unfortunately for Robert, Eugene's new wife hated the doll as well, and he was banished to the attic. Instead of the attic, Robert convinced Eugene to put him in the Tourette room, because he wanted a room with a nice view. As Eugene aged, he spent nearly all of his time in the Tourette room, talking to Robert and painting, until his death in 1974. After the death of Eugene and his wife, their home was bought by Myrtle Redder, and just like before, the events started again. Myrtle stated that the doll would be in a different place in the home from where she left him. Her guests would also say the doll would disappear from sight, and his expression would even change when they spoke negatively about him. Finally, in 1994, Myrtle had enough and donated Robert to the Fort East Martello Museum in Key West, Florida, where he still resides to this day. Although eccentric to say the least, Eugene was a talented artist, and even designed the gallery at the Ford East Martello Museum. He also had plans to turn his own home into a museum, with a wax imprint with the artist's hands as a sticking point. Though his dream was never realized, the home became known as the Artist's House, and has attracted a large tourist crowd wanting to see the home where Eugene and Robert grew up in. Chucky is probably the most famous story based on Otto and Robert. However, my favorite adaptation of the legend would be a movie called Pin. I saw this movie as a child, and it thoroughly scared me. I don't remember the exact plot, but I do remember it following a man who was obsessed with his father's anatomically correct medical doll. Leon names the doll Pin after Pinocchio, and becomes extremely close with his new buddy. Just like with Otto, Leon begins to blame Pin for his violent outburst and other horrifying deeds he commits. There are also other projects based on Robert, including his own, but by checking out the audience score, I would recommend avoiding them. This is a tough one. My best guess would be Otto had a mental health problem, or was possibly abused. In order to cope, he gave the doll a personality of its own. At least that's what I think. It still wouldn't explain the other accounts of Robert, and even Myrtle, of course. They could be lying, but why would staff quit if it was all made up? I still think the logical explanation would be Otto creating a personality for Robert, but just maybe he was telling the truth. Maybe there is something much darker behind that cute little sailor outfit that Robert wears.